Capitalist contradiction. This is one of those aspects of Marxist theory that shows us why certain things happen in an economy or in a country where it looks like things might be going in favor of the working class, and that we believe that it's really just a bunch of people all out for their own personal interests, when in really there's one class that holds power and one class that does not hold power. Take, for example, the issue of net neutrality. I think pretty much everybody on the working class side, or even the middle class side for that matter, can pretty much support the idea of net neutrality, meaning nobody really owns the internet and nobody really has the right to control it. However, sections of the capitalist class do not agree. Many of those who stand to benefit from it being more strictly controlled. And by that I mean primarily if we're leaving out the mechanism of, defending the interests of the capitalist class by the government, if we just actually focus on the actual class itself, the entertainment industry is a really big one. How often have they interfered with people's internet connections, saying, we want tighter regulation in order to control whether or not people download our movies, whether or not people download our music, what have you. But I think the biggest one behind it, pushing this, is the movie industry. Now, this is happening for obvious reasons. Intellectual property rights in general. No one's disputing that. That's what this is about, protecting supposed profit losses, which I actually find quite hilarious. Don't think there's been any significant loss in profits. But aside from that, there are sections of the capitalist class who are opposed to control over the internet. Apple, Google, and Amazon, for one thing. Why? Because any strict, overbearing control over the internet hurts their profit motive. So we see here the real situation. One section of the capitalist class wants that strict control because it serves their profit interests. And another section of the capitalist class doesn't want it because it would hurt their interests. So we do see that there is a contradiction there between different groups within the ruling elite. Of course, overall, the general interest of the public, of the working and possibly middle class, is not having a dictatorial internet. So while this struggle between the capitalist class is going on, what the people want goes entirely ignored. Now, there actually is a real struggle over this going on. A judge recently ruled that the FCC does have a jurisdictional position over what happens with the internet, meaning they can decide whether it turns dictatorial or not. And it appears from recent events that they are leaning heavily towards neutrality on the internet. But please keep in mind that while this is a positive thing, it really only takes one executive order to overturn that and turn into a dictatorial internet. It only requires the head of the FCC being removed and replaced with somebody else who will carry out this interest. So it's not as great as it seems. As right-wingers so adamantly and rightfully say, freedom is a constant struggle against those trying to take it away. That's very true, which means it will always be a battle to keep an open and free internet from dictatorial control. But what we see here is a struggle going on. Google, Apple, Amazon are now lobbying huge amounts of money to keep the internet free, while on the other hand you have largely the entertainment industry and some other industries as well lobbying to keep it more strict. Now what's going to happen? Obviously one of these things is going to win out over the other. They're both throwing more and more amount of money into it. They're both throwing more and more resources into protecting their side of this conflict. And eventually, all these actions or quantitative occurrences are eventually going to break out into a qualitative. Either somebody's going to come along to finally put a stop to the attempts to put the internet under dictatorial control, at least for a little while, or that dictatorial control is going to go through. So once again, we see not just the contradiction, but we see a quantitative into qualitative change through dialectics as we as the Marxists understand it. I think in the end, we are still going to end up with a dictatorial internet, because while Google, Apple, and Amazon will have their profits hindered to whatever degree, I don't know, but it's certainly significant enough that they think it's serious. it's still going to happen. In the end, the overall interests of the capitalist class is in the favor of making sure the internet is not free so they can stop organization, so they can stop social media interactions that would challenge the power of the capitalist class or even just the bourgeois government in general. So in the end, I believe that the attempts by Google, Apple, and Amazon will ultimately fail. As more social unrest grows in the country because of other contradictions of capitalism, like this is the greatest, freest country, richest country in the world, yet overwhelming poverty. High rates of empty homes right next to high rates of homeless people. As these things get worse, the government will have to resort to more and more oppressive measures to keep the current system, to keep the capitalist system in place at the behest of the capitalist class itself. And when it gets bad enough, even Google, Apple, and Amazon will eventually be forced to submit to these actions in order to preserve themselves and the fortunes that they stand on as it becomes to be challenged. Now, while it is important to understand the contradictions between the working class and the capitalist class, it's also very important to understand what our interests are. A free and open internet is definitely in the working class's interests. And that's what we should be fighting for, and I'm pretty sure that's what everybody's fighting for, on our side anyway. But it's important to understand how these contradictions arise and how they operate if we are going to fight them effectively and to fully understand what they mean and how they work. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.